Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Breed's Adding Value podcast. My name is Guido, and I'm the Manager of Acquisition and Strategy at New Breed. For those of you who don't know, New Breed is a customer acquisition agency focused on helping B2B companies grow and expand their business. And we do this by following the inbound methodology, which at its core is about adding value before extracting value. So the goal of this podcast is to bring you stories of how people add value to their customers, their company, and the individuals around them. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and check us out on newbreedmarketing.com. Today, I'm excited to have New Breed's Director of Services, Al Moore, join the podcast. Prior to joining New Breed, you were most recently the Director of Marketing at Dealer.com, a digital marketing solution and partner for the automotive industry. So Al, I really appreciate you taking the time to join today, and welcome to the podcast.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks so much, Guido. This is my first time on the behind the microphone of a podcast. I think sometime in the near future, every human being is going to have their own podcast. But but until that time, it's fun. It's exciting to be here. Thank you.
Podcasting is the future of social media.
Yeah, right.
So you have a really interesting background. Over the course of your career, you've worked as a writer, a coordinator, communications consultant, website and social lead, a brand manager. So to start off, can you talk about how your experience across those different disciplines shaped your approach to marketing?
Sure. Well, when you play it all back like that, it sounds like a lot of different jobs, but at the end of the day, they mostly all pertain to kind of brand storytelling and defining and articulating what the narrative and what the through line was for any given organization. And I had really tremendous mentors and teams along the way, and I was very fortunate to be a part of some really great growth stories. So I'll just start by just acknowledging that. I think any marketer or salesperson will tell you that you need a lot of help and support and a team along the way, and it's always great to have that. And I was fortunate to have had that in my career to date. And yeah, the common thread has really been about how can we articulate and define the story we're looking to tell as an organization and align all of the different levers and opportunities to tell that story in the right way. And that's really been the core of it throughout my career to date.
So how have you seen that change over the course of your career, where brands have different ways of telling their brand story?
Well, I mean, the obvious is just the tidal wave of digital. When I started my career, digital was a part of the marketing puzzle, but it wasn't the defining piece of any marketing strategy necessarily. It was viewed as kind of adjacent to core traditional marketing. And that obviously has completely changed. And the other piece of it has been, in terms of big trends, has been the rise of content and also the rise of analytics and attribution. So for example, content marketing, what's come to be known as content marketing, kind of has always existed within marketing. How can we create some self-published storytelling, whether it's brochure content or white papers, but how can we tell our story in these different mediums? But then as digital kind of came along and there was this proliferation of different channels and avenues to tell the story, content marketing really rose as a core discipline and a core staple within marketing. And then the other final piece of this is inbound. I think we take it as a given that inbound marketing is a core successful methodology in a lot of cases. But what the methodology has done for us is actually create sort of a galvanizing, like unifying framework through which to deliver your digital marketing and your content marketing, so that there's a lot less guesswork in terms of the things that you need to do to be successful in terms of articulating and telling that story. So I say those three core trends, have been at the heart of the change, that I've been, lucky enough to see and be a part of over these last, 10 or 15 years.
Hmm. And as you were talking through there, you mentioned things like digital becoming a lot more prevalent in inbound marketing and even attribution. So can you talk a little bit about how those things have made it easier for marketers to not just send a content message out or a piece of content out there in the hopes that someone comes across it, but now in a way where we can be a lot more targeted and laser focused in the way that we deliver that message?
Right. Well, there's a few different, on the tactical level, there's, things like SEO, and you can actually identify now what your audience is actually searching for and where the interest is. And then on the attribution side, where we are right now is really exciting, because when the digital, I mentioned the tidal wave of digital, when that first
Hmm.
started to come along and in an earlier kind of iteration, um, everybody was excited and delighted by the prospect of real, marketing attribution. Um, but a lot of the ways to get at that attribution were sort of primitive,
Hmm.
and marketers had to invest a lot of time and energy into piecing data together from different data sets, including,
Hmm.
Google Analytics as one, piece of, core piece of that puzzle. But it was still difficult and challenging to actually really solidify, a story around the data and an insight around the data. I think that now we are in a way better place to look at the data, identify where the audience is searching, identify what's driving the traffic, and then carry that all the way through into revenue and sales attribution and business impact.
Hmm.
That's been a profound shift. And again, when you think about that, the brand story or the content strategy, knowing what um, what levers are driving real business outcomes gives you a lot better insight in terms of where you want to put your focus and where you want to align your resources. I think
Hmm.
that articulating the brand story is a little bit outside of that, but in terms of how you deliver that story to get results, now we have so much more clarity around that.
Hmm.
It's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I like that you hit on that at the end there, because that's one thing where with the rise of all of the ways that we can target people, the ways that we can drive revenue, and the way that we can attribute all of that back to the efforts that we're doing, I think it's a lot more probable now for people to become hyper focused on just the types of activities that are going to drive revenue for the company. How do you avoid um, allowing that to like pull you away from the types of things that help you tell that story for the brand in a creative way? Because there's those two possibilities that are always present, and I think it's important for marketers to find a balance between the two.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that what what I'm hearing from you is you're getting at that overlap between brand and demand generation.
Hmm.
Because you can't, there's got to be a symbiosis here. You can't have one without the other. You need to be able to really understand how your brand is positioned, who your audiences are, how you want to be perceived, the look, the feel, the overall reputation, the overall core narrative of how you want to stand out in the marketplace and get your, get your story told. And then how do you reconcile that and make sure that you're doing that in a way that's going to really drive business results, and fuel demand for your product and your solution. And then ideally you create that virtuous cycle where you're gaining insights based on the demand generation activities
Hmm.
that can potentially inform, okay, maybe maybe we're missing the mark on this feature or benefit, and maybe we can strengthen that on the brand side. Or you're just identifying, okay, where do I need to, pour more gas on the fire, from a tactical perspective to really lean into, getting results and fueling my pipeline. But
Hmm.
you can't do one without the other. You have to look at the data to, make your decisions, but you also have to have confidence and put energy and rigor into defining, your core brand and really putting your best foot forward on that side.
Hmm. So apart from finding that balance between brand and demand, or lead generation for that matter, are there any other key challenges that you've seen across the space, both in your past experience and working with clients today?
Well, I think if you take a step back in terms of big challenges, one major challenge that we're all facing today as marketers is this proliferation of deliverables that we need to execute on. And at the same time, there is a increasingly uh, shrinking pool of resources, so to speak, whether it's budget or in-house headcount, or capacity. So in other words, as marketers, we're trying to do more things with less resources than
Hmm.
ever before. That's a big trend that I have observed sort of firsthand over the years. So when you're faced with that challenge, it can put a lot of stress on you in terms of, well, I have to generate all of these activities, and I have to get these results. But in working all of the activity, it can be difficult to actually think about and be intentional about the core strategy behind that.
Hmm.
Really articulating what we're trying to go out and do. Oftentimes, we know what the results that we're trying to get, the target that we've been given to hit as marketers. Um, in order to hit that target, yes, you need a lot of activity, but you also need that sound, strategic underpinning, and you need a really good, core product. And at times, marketers and product marketers in particular need to work with, the exec stakeholders and the product teams to really say, okay, here's how we need to bring this product to the market, and really here's what the brand strategy needs to be.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's a twofold challenge that marketers face is how do we do more with less, and by more, how do we put um, you know solve for social media, solve for email nurturing, solve for um, blog thought leadership, solve for product marketing, sales enablement, solve for account-based marketing, just this huge vast ocean of deliverables. How do we do
Hmm.
that but also have a strategic underpinning, that ties all those things together?
Totally. Yeah, and you mentioned a few things there just in terms of how marketing has to be involved or at least know about what's happening in so many more areas of the business than they may have needed to in the past. Marketing has an impact on sales, they have an impact on service delivery, they have an impact on product, and there should be feedback loops between each of those areas. So it's becoming increasingly difficult, or it could be becoming increasingly difficult for marketers to be able to see that holistic view of how the company is performing and how they contribute to that. Can you talk a little bit about how marketers can overcome some of those challenges?
Well, I think one of the things that we as marketers, one of the great gifts that most successful marketers have, is curiosity, and resourcefulness, and the ability to really all the different and identify and synthesize all the disparate inputs that we might get across an organization.
Hmm.
So marketers are generally uniquely situated because you you can interface and should be interfacing with product. You should be interfacing with sales, be directly, obviously, lockstep aligned with sales, interfacing with internal communications, talent and people, HR departments, production and implementation departments. To gather all of the inputs in towards how the brand is being activated in any given space, and then marketers generally, more so than anybody else in the organization, are the synthesizers to be able to pull all those disparate inputs together and collect them and say, this is the sum total of all these things, so this is the core of who we are, and then
Hmm.
ideally be able to go and activate that. So I think as marketers, that's a really exciting place to be within an organization. And then
Hmm.
similarly, as agency partners, we have the opportunity to work with marketing stakeholders, sales stakeholders, to say, okay, what have you been hearing across your business? What are the broader business objectives you have? And so how can we align to that and amplify those things? So
Hmm.
I think that as big of a challenge as it is to reconcile that number and volume of inputs that businesses now have, uh, it's also equally impressive and exciting as an opportunity to be the conduits of all those inputs, the synthesizers of those things, and then to be able to actually go out and activate them in the market.
Hmm. And as all of these new inputs are coming in, there's a lot of new avenues for marketers to pursue now in terms of getting their messages out there. So what are some of the trends that you're watching today in terms of where marketing is going and some of the shifts that you might see in the industry?
Well, that's a great question. I think, we have a really, at this point, we have a pretty mature, inbound methodology, and that gives us a really good baseline, and foundation to operate from. you know, as marketers, whether you're solving for these things in-house, or you're working with an agency partner, we have proven techniques for, blog development, thought leadership, content development, web development, SEO, paid search marketing in general. These marketing opportunities are relatively mature now, which is super exciting. And now we can continue to build on those things, and we get into conversational marketing, we get into account-based marketing. Those two, video and social, those areas are really where we're going to be seeing some super exciting developments, I think, in the future, as we get, build on this foundation of traditional form conversion, give our audiences new ways to engage with the brand, new ways to start a dialogue, and as marketers, new ways to, and new form factors for actually reaching and connecting with our audiences, which at the end of the day is what what it's all about with marketing. So I think it's a great place to be here, in terms of we have a proven methodology and framework, things that we know that work within the digital space, and we also have a number of pretty exciting new trends and opportunities that we're looking ahead to.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to see the rise of things like ABM, conversational marketing, and video. In a way, I feel like all of those are pretty connected to each other. They're really about creating a stronger connection with the person on the other end. ABM is just about putting a lot more emphasis and time around delivering a tailored, contextualized message to someone at the right time. Video allows you to be a little bit more personal, and conversational marketing allows you to connect in that moment. All of those things are just allowing us to connect with the people that could be potential buyers of ours in a much more efficient, faster, and real-time way, which is really exciting to be able to see. And with all of that stuff coming into play, there's a lot of different areas now that marketers can invest in. So when it comes to thinking about your budget and what's going to drive the most value, where do you feel like marketers should get started?
That's a great question. Difficult to speak for all marketers. Obviously, it sort of goes without saying that every business is different, every strategy is different, and every budget is different. I do continue to believe in the core kind of inbound framework and methodology, in terms of making sure that you have a really solid foundation built, both with a conversion optimized website, sales optimized website, the overall inbound systems alignment and infrastructure built out, so that you can get your leads and interest to the right places, and your core sort of branded positioning, personas developed, and your overall branded positioning. What do your products do? What is your core value prop? Is that succinctly articulated, both at what your company does and then your core products. So I think you definitely at all times want to start with those kind of foundational components. And then I think in terms of things that are kind of exciting, and where you want to continue to invest, I think there's two areas. One is, you don't want to underinvest in your core value prop definition. In other words, your product marketing needs to be pretty sound. Clear value prop on what makes your product new and different in the market, good foundational collateral that articulates that and is going to enable your sales team, and that can also be reframed to enable your thought leadership and your content marketing. And then the other piece is, I think, continuing to invest in marketing and sales alignment. We have so much, one shift, not as large as the overall digital marketing shift, but one other shift that we're seeing, Guido, is we're seeing marketing increasingly reporting into sales, and an increasing desire to have marketing and sales really be moving, in lockstep. So I think that behooves us as marketers to really identify what sales teams need to be successful, and how to equip them with good materials, collateral, and story to go out and do that. And I think that we have at times seen um, marketers underinvest in that area, developing really good rock solid collateral
Hmm.
and content that runs the gamut between, you know, driving pipeline and working the marketing funnel, but also enabling sales, enabling retention, and then enabling upsell.
Hmm. Totally. It's interesting that those messaging pieces and everything that you just mentioned is so critical, because I think a lot of times people in marketing just want to move quickly. We're always pressured to move as fast as possible, but sometimes it's really worth spending the time on those activities so that as you do move quickly, not only are you able to do it more efficiently, but it's also more effective too. So the results that you're getting can really speak for themselves after the fact.
Mhm.
Um, so we've been talking quite a bit about some challenges that are being faced in the industry as a whole and some of the trends that we've seen over the last couple of years or so. But I wanted to ask you what one of the biggest challenges that you personally have faced over the course of your career.
That's a great question. Um, there's two challenges that I have personally faced. One is kind of more operational, and then the other is more strategic. On the operational side, managing through acquisitions, whether you're being acquired or you're doing the acquiring, is very difficult. And in my personal experience, I essentially worked through a couple of acquisitions, two acquisitions in about 3.5 years. And in doing that, the marketing model shifted from being one in which the marketing disciplines were all dedicated in-house to one brand, to more of a hybrid structure where we were serving multiple brands and then bringing in more agencies to support those. And then
Hmm.
finally, the model sort of culminated with um, primarily agency support. So in other words, just small handful of dedicated in-house marketers, and kind of a constellation of agencies to help support, drive marketing forward. So on the one hand, it was really great, valuable experience for me to really get a sense of that relationship. Seeing both of those models. Whether you're working entirely in-house or you're working entirely with managing through agency partners. But on the other hand, to live that, was very challenging anytime you're going through, a major shift in your operating model. Um, and then similarly on the more strategic side, a big challenge was just working through what's the brand strategy going to be after these acquisitions. Whether you're being acquired or you are doing the acquiring, there's a tension in terms of what's the best way to tell the brand story, what's the way to do that in a way that's going to not necessarily compromise equity that might have existed in a
Hmm.
in a brand that's being absorbed, and to work that through and gain kind of stakeholder alignment across an organizations, was very challenging, for me on a personal note. And I think a lot of marketers struggle with that. There's no necessarily right or wrong answer, but it is a challenge, and it is something that I think marketers are going to continue to face, particularly in the B2B and the SaaS area where acquisitions are so common.
Hmm. And one of the last questions that I like to ask everyone before we close out the episode is, what is your favorite part about what you do today?
Well, I would say, just to bring it full circle, at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about, I had the opportunity to kind of help, um, brands identify what the core story is, tell that story, and then work the different marketing and sales levers to help do that. And that really is, very fulfilling for me personally, and I think fulfilling for a lot of marketers. And now we get to do that at not only at an unprecedented scale. I mentioned the volume of deliverables, but that's also, creates a lot of, it's exciting, it's fulfilling when you see all
Hmm.
those things come together. But then also we get to do it in a way that's much more, I think, authentic than ever before. When I first started my career, um, a lot of marketing was either guesswork, or a lot of what
Hmm.
marketers were, how marketing was traditionally viewed was, you're putting lipstick on a pig, or you're doing a lot of BSing to, get people in the door.
Hmm.
What we now know to be true is that an authentic brand story and an authentic message um, is going to resonate a lot better. So obviously you want to position, as favorably, and lean into, the core benefits, and um, be thoughtful and strategic in how you go about your positioning. But at the
Hmm.
end of the day, the most effective work is going to be, authentic, compelling, concise, creative, and, exciting and engaging. And the numbers are going to bear that out in terms of your performance. And now we're going to get real concrete numbers in terms of how, the work does perform. So the ability to not only help define and articulate what a brand story is, define and articulate what the right levers to pull to get that story told, and to do that in a way that's, authentic and credible, is super fulfilling to see. And a lot of my particular role currently is not necessarily doing that work. That there's tremendous amounts of talent around these that I get to sort of observe that happening. But to be able to unlock that, and identify ways that we can align our services and align our offerings to accomplish that for clients is very fulfilling to me.
Hmm. It's interesting to see how much authenticity is starting to come out with everything that companies are doing, both from a marketing standpoint, a sales standpoint, and even beyond that in service delivery. Um, it's awesome to see that shift occurring, and I'm really loving the way that the industry is going in that regard. It's exciting to see. Are there any other final thoughts that you want to leave listeners with before we close out for the day?
Well, I would just say, just building on the thought on kind of, as I was kind of thinking through what had been a challenge to me personally as a marketer, and working through that relationship with, your in-house team, your in-house sales team, and your agency partners.
Hmm.
I think that, that's something that I think all marketers can really, give some thought to, is if they think critically about, what's the best way to align the services that I need, the disciplines that I need, and where do I want to put investments. I think that as we need to deliver on more things as marketers, it actually becomes kind of uh, just necessary to work with and trust your agency partners.
Hmm.
And the more that, marketers can put that faith, that trust, and that confidence in their partners, and build those relationships, the better off they're going to be. I think that it's the only way to solve for the complexity of marketing today. Is you
Hmm.
can't go it alone. You need a lot of disciplines. You need a real depth of expertise across those disciplines to be able to be successful. And you need partners that are going to help meet you on the strategic level as well as on the executional level.
Hmm.
And that's a big part of what we are looking to do here at New Breed, because it's what we feel like our partners need and what we feel like marketers need. And the other piece that I would just say is, and again, this gets back to your earlier question about, what's my favorite part about where we are right now, is we're in a really exciting position where we can actually unify marketing and sales in a way that gets real concrete results. And at larger corporations, and as companies mature, it gets harder and harder to get into those habits and really align those teams and build that foundation the right way where marketing and sales really is unified and integrated, it's really, really exciting to see that unification occur, on a daily basis, here.
Mhm.
And I think as marketers, it's a great challenge and opportunity to get into those habits of true marketing sales unification early in the growth stage, so that you can really accelerate that growth and not have to, you know, try to do it later. Right? I
Mhm.
think early it's really exciting to be able to get that foundation built and set up early in the growth stage. And I definitely would challenge all marketers to really embrace that and think that way, because it's going to save you a lot of stress down the road if you do.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more. That foundation is so critical to business success today, and spending the time to work on that is so important to make sure that you're set up for success when it comes to growth. But Al, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining. We've got more great episodes on the way, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you can get notified when our next episode comes out. In the meantime, check out newbreedmarketing.com for our other great resources. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.